Hello, Texas 4-H. My name is Molly Keck, and I am with the Texas A&M AgriLife Extension Service and the Department of Entomology. I am also one of the authors on the 4-H Entomology Guidelines. These videos were developed to help you better understand what you need to know for the Entomology Identification Contest. Remember, for each specimen, you need to know their common name, what order they're found in, what their life cycle is, what type of mouthparts they have, their host or location or where they are found, and their significance. Are they a pest, beneficial, inconsequential, or variable? In this study video, we are going to continue to be looking at the parametabolous insects and covering these three orders: Phasmatodea, Psocodea, and Thysanoptera. Remember, these are insects that have a gradual metamorphosis. They only have 3 stages: an egg, a nymph, and an adult. Phasmatodea is the first order that we're going to be looking at, and these are the walking sticks. All age groups, juniors, intermediates, and seniors, need to know this insect. There's only one species in this order you need to be aware of, and that's just call them walking sticks. Their host is going to be vegetation or shrubs. They're going to be found on that vegetation and shrub trying to blend in. They have chewing mouth parts, but while they're eating that plant material, they're not eating enough of it to be really considered a pest. And so these are considered inconsequential. They have a gradual or parametabolous life cycle. They're very, very slow moving. And the word Phasmatodea means phantom-like. So if you think of walking sticks as being kind of creepy and slow moving, then it might help you remember Phasmatodea, phantom-like walking sticks. They're very camouflaged to blend in and look just like a stick. Sometimes it's even hard to tell the difference between the head and the hind end. And they can't really move very fast, but one defense mechanism they do have is they can ooze a milky secretion out of their rear end or their body, and they can kind of squirt it at you. And this can burn your skin, but it can certainly burn your eyes if it gets in it. We do have one species that can get as long as 7 inches, and that's the longest insect in the United States. It appears to be longer a lot of times because the legs stick out and the antennae are so long, but it's really an optical illusion, and they're only about 7 inches long. The next order is Psocodea. Psocodea include the bark lice, the book lice, and the true lice. Prior to the 2025 guideline revision, true lice were their own separate order. These guys were separated out, and the name was a little bit different. Well, we've grouped true lice together with bark lice and book lice, and we've changed the name to Psocodea. Intermediates and seniors need to know all of the specimens in this group, but juniors only need to know one species. The host is going to vary. Tree trunks or some sort of an animal. They are all considered pests, have the gradual parametabolous life cycle, and they have chewing or mandibulate mouth parts, or it could be piercing and sucking like with many of the lice. Bark lice and book lice are very similar to one another. We call them different names based off of where they're found. This needs to be only known, this specimen, by intermediates and seniors. Juniors do not need to know it. Some of them can have wings, like in that right-hand picture. They all have really long, thin antennae. One species on the left, those I believe are nymphs, and they have that kind of really cool colored pattern. But a lot of times the ones that are found on tree trunks are just kind of a gray or a brownish color blending in with the tree. They're able to produce silk, and so they'll wrap the tree in webbing, and this can be alarming to a lot of people. They're hiding underneath that, and they're feeding on lichen, dead plant material, fungi, algae. They might be found on other plants. They aren't necessarily always found on tree trunks, but the host location for bark lice or book lice is going to be tree trunks. The book lice tend to be found inside, but you might get a picture of this and you just need to say its host is a tree trunk. They, to me, look a little bit like a termite. They still have that really long antenna. They don't have the wings. And when they're found inside, they could be a pest because they're found feeding on a paper material and also grain products. And those grain products usually are considered out of condition, or what's called out of condition, which means it's generally moldy, it's gotten too wet. It's probably not something that you should eat, but you might be finding them in your oatmeal or in other grain products that are in your pantry. The true lice group in Psocodea are going to be found depending on what they feed on. They're very host specific: poultry, maybe humans, swine, cattle. They are definitely considered a pest, and they have that gradual life cycle parametabolus, and they vary. There are chewing lice and there are sucking lice. So they could have haustellate mouthparts or they could have mandibulate mouthparts. The one louse that everyone needs to know is the head louse. Louse is singular and lice is plural. So you have a lot of head lice or you see one head louse. These have piercing and sucking mouthparts, so they're going to go to the base of your head and they're going to pierce into your scalp and they're going to suck blood, and their spit that they kind of backwash into you is what you find itchy if you have lice and you have an itchy head. They're small, they're flat, they don't have wings even though they should. They've lost wings because they would get in the way. They are a parasite, and so parasites are all considered pests. And the host for the head louse are humans. They're found on mammals and they're found on the head. Chewing lice need to be known by intermediates and seniors. We have grouped chewing lice. It used to be chicken head louse, but we now are just calling all of these chewing lice, and you don't need to differentiate the type of chewing louse. So examples of chewing lice include chicken head louse or chicken body louse. These, you can tell, have a chewing mouth part or are chewing lice because the head is very wide. It's wider than the thorax. If it's a sucking louse, like the head louse here, the head is very thin. It's thinner than the body. They are still wingless, they're still small, they're still flat-bodied. The host for these is going to be animals. Most chewing lice are feeding on the feathers of birds, or they're feeding on the hair. They're found on the feathers of birds, but they're also chewing on your head, on mammals, or on the skin. So the host for these is just a general term, animals. Intermediates and seniors also need to know the hog louse. This is a sucking louse. It's a very large louse, about 1/4 of an inch long, with big claws to hang on to the hair. The body is thinner than the rest, or the head is thinner than the rest of the body, so that's why I know it has the sucking, piercing, sucking, haustellate mouth parts. And the host for these is going to be swine. Hogs are a type of swine. And then finally, for intermediates and seniors, the short-nosed cattle louse, so also a sucking louse, very small. The host is cattle. The name of where it's found is in the name of the insect, so that would make it pretty easy if it was a matching question. And our final order for this study material video is Thysanoptera, which are the thrips. Thrips is plural and it's also singular, so it's 1 thrips and it's 15 thrips. They're found on flowers. They're considered variable because there are many species of thrips, and some of them can be predatory, eating spider mites, eating other thrips, eating little insect eggs that might be doing damage to those plants. Some of them are inconsequential. They're not really doing anything bad. And then other species can be damaging to crops or to flowers. These are very small insects. They're only about the size of a hyphen on a piece of paper. And if you have roses, hibiscus, or other flowering plants, if you go outside and you shake those flowers onto a piece of light paper, you might see these little splinters, these little brownish things fall out and maybe move just a little bit. Well, those are thrips. They're incredibly small. And one thing that's unique about them is that their wings are fringed. So they have a wing that kind of has feathery look to it. And the other thing that's different about them is their mouth parts are called rasping. It's a type of haustellate mouth part, but it rasps. So it will, they'll kind of scratch at the plant and then let those juices ooze out, and then they suck up those juices. So they have a haustellate mouth part, but we call it rasping. For more information, study guide materials, and more, please visit the Texas A&M Entomology Department Extension website. Visit entomology.tamu.edu/extension. Scroll down and click on 4-H and Youth Programs.